Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Me, Myself, and the Narcissist. Um, I'm hoping everyone's got their cups of tea and are ready to settle in. My name is Amy. I have been in at least one narcissistic relationship. I've been in other relationships where partners have had highly narcissistic traits. And this podcast, I really, really wanted to make this podcast because it has only in the recent months dawned on me that I was living with a narcissist. And this revelation really did transform my whole belief system around relationships, around my worldview. And I really wanted to share this journey because I thought it can't just be me who is going through this. So, over the last few weeks and months, I have interviewed women who have had narcissistic partners. I have done extensive research on covert narcissism, specifically covert narcissism. I'm also a coach for attachment styles as well, and I will go more into that in newer podcast episodes. But I really wanted to tell you a little bit about what my relationship was like living with a covert narcissist and how I didn't know that I was living with a covert narcissist. And, if your relationship was anything like mine, you would have thought that you were the problem. You would have thought it was something wrong with you. You might have gone into therapy. You might have got coaching because you were brainwashed to think that you were the one with the issue. And I can tell you after, 7 years of being with this person, I went through thousands and thousands of pounds worth of therapy and coaching to figure out what it was about me, why I couldn't hold down a relationship, why I was so difficult to be with. And it never occurred to me that the problem was him. And I am not saying, guys, that I was an angel because I absolutely wasn't. I wasn't an angel. But what I was prepared to do was to own my side of the street and to heal whatever was in me, to essentially bend over backwards to get this relationship to work. And I'm going to go through the history of this relationship. And you're probably going to think, Amy, why didn't you see this? Why didn't you spot this? And the honest answer is that, I met this person when I was on the back of a divorce. I was desperate for love and I bought what he was selling. And it is a bit more complicated than that. And I will go through some of the things that I've learned along this transformation. So I met the narcissist about 7.5 years ago. As I said, I was on the back of a divorce. I hadn't been divorced for very long, and I'd been with my ex-husband for about 15 years since I was at school. I'd got a 1-year-old child, and for whatever reason, I thought it was a good idea to go out and date. And at this point, I wasn't really um, I was a bit naive because, as I said, I met my husband when I was 16. I hadn't had a lot of dating experience. Things like online dating weren't available. Mobile phones, guys, were not available when I met my ex-husband. So I went into the dating world completely blinkered, completely naive, and I met this person who appeared to be really vulnerable. They appeared to have this sort of innocent, childlike quality about them. And it appealed to me. This person hadn't had any long-term relationships. And he was at a period in his life where that was incredibly unusual. And this was the first red flag that I just didn't take any notice of. I just didn't. I just thought, oh, that's a bit weird, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because, you know, that's just what I did. And, we had similar interests. We were in the same line of work, and, he appeared to be really interested. He didn't push things. He didn't love bomb, um, which made me feel a sense of safety. It made me feel quite safe that this person wasn't rushing things. They weren't, trying to force things into place. I wasn't at that point feeling like there was something wrong. Um, and as we dated, and it wasn't perhaps until a couple of months after where I started to think, there's something amiss here, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, but in hindsight, this person didn't share a lot about themselves. And this person, wasn't talking about introducing me to friends or anything like that. And there was just something about this person that my intuition was nudging me. And I just didn't want to see it, guys. I didn't want to see it. I found him immensely attractive. I'd found someone that had the same things in common as me, someone who was fun, someone who could give me different experiences. I'd been in a relationship for a very long time, and this person was different. This person was new. And it really, really appealed to that part of me that had grown quite bored in relationships. I just got into my 30s, and I wanted another committed relationship. I actually like being committed to somebody. I like being somebody's other half. And again, I will go into codependency later on in these episodes. Um, so as the relationship went on, I remember sort of the around the 4 month mark, it was around the Christmas time period, and this person stood me up on a date. And I remember feeling really, really offended. And I set quite a firm boundary with this person. And at that point, I was thinking, no, this isn't acceptable. This isn't right for me. And just prior to that, he made a sexual comment about one of his female friends. And this might be something that you can definitely resonate with, particularly if you've dealt with vulnerable narcissists in the past. When I'd approached them about this and mentioned that this isn't something I find acceptable, what I got back was, oh, I know I'm such an idiot. Or, oh, what I've said is completely unforgivable. Please forgive me. I really, really love you. And this wasn't, too far into the relationship that he was saying all these things. And I forgave him. I forgave him. And we moved forward. And then things started happening again where I would try to bring things up. I would try to express a need or to, just have a conversation about something that I wasn't happy about. And I got the same treatment back again, but then it started to turn quite nasty. That it got to the point where if I mentioned anything that this person didn't like, they would ghost me, they would block me. And I would be sat there thinking, oh my gosh, it's me, I'm asking too much, I'm too awkward, I'm just, a battle axe, just for really expressing a need. And it went on like this for probably about a year, and I tried to break up with this person several times um, throughout this few months, but every time I was sort of manipulated into forgiving him. I was manipulated by him saying how, oh, he's just inexperienced. He just doesn't know. Or, having thought that now, I could see exactly what was happening. But when I was in it, I could not see. I couldn't see why this was happening. I couldn't see that this was all manipulation because this person was a very, very good liar. He wouldn't answer questions about previous relationships. He wouldn't answer questions about former partners. He was very cagey about that. And in the end, we split up. And this was following a trip to Amsterdam where we had quite an aggressive argument. And I remember him drinking far too much and having an argument with me for wanting to go back to the hotel. And it was so uncomfortable, and I felt so unsafe because I was so far away from home that I just said whatever needed to be said to calm the situation down so I could at least get home. And now, looking back, I can see how it was love bombing, devaluing, discarding, and hoovering, because eventually, after this breakup, he did hoover me back in. And this went on for 7 years. And this is the reason why I'm making this podcast, because, I looked into narcissism years and years and years ago. And I used to think, oh, but he doesn't do this thing, so that must mean he's not a narcissist. So over the 7 years, we split up, we got back together, we split up, we got back together. And this cycle was ongoing and it was so painful. And I found myself being trauma bonded to this person. And I can see now how this person took advantage of my fear that he was going to leave me. And of course, this was all my fault. Of course, it was my trust issues that were the problem. Not that he'd, breached my trust in any way. That wasn't the problem. It was my trust issues that were the issue. And I believed it. I believed, oh my God, he's right. He's right. It's my trust issues that are the problem. And I need to really sort out this abandonment wound, these trust issues. I need to sort out my anxious attachment style because clearly I can't function in relationships. And I took on all of the responsibility for the failing of this relationship. And I just want you guys to listen to this with an open heart and just know that there's never any judgment here. Even if, there's people in your life that are saying, you need to leave this person, trauma bonding is real. You can get addicted to a person, and leaving somebody who you're trauma bonded with is like quitting heroin. It's horrible. And I remember during this first time period of breaking up, I couldn't get out of bed. I had to have my son's dad have him for 2 weeks. I was on antidepressants. I couldn't go to work. And I was just so, so broken. And in that time, I found spirituality. And that's a whole other story. I got into some quite toxic teachings because I had this gaping abandonment wound. And, the manifestation journey, the manifestation teachings made it so I didn't have to deal with this abandonment wound, which you'll be happy to know I have now dealt with this abandonment wound and I can actually function in relationships now. So for years, we went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, always my fault. And then around, I would say 2.5 years ago, we'd broken up and I'd done an awful lot of healing in that time on my attachment style. And I really did believe that this relationship can work now because I've worked on myself. And when we got back together, we discussed moving in together, and we did actually move in together quite shortly after. And it perhaps was the wake up call that I needed, because everything ramped up. All of the gaslighting, all of the manipulation ramped up. And when I say that, he moved into my house, but it felt like I was living in his house. It was very oppressive, but not overtly. If you were standing in the same room as us, you wouldn't have been able to detect it, because it was so subtle. All as I knew is that I felt on edge all of the time. I felt like I was treading on eggshells all of the time. I was watching what I said. I was thinking about how to say something so that he wouldn't threaten to leave me. And it didn't take long after this person moved in. I think it was about 4 weeks when he threatened to leave me again. And I was devastated. I was absolutely distraught by this. And I went straight into codependency patterns. I went straight into neglecting what my needs were, fawning to him, wanting him to stay. And he did. And this happened on quite a few special occasions, which I didn't even notice that until I was out of the relationship. It completely ruined my son's birthday party, for example. It ruined Mother's Day. Christmases were ruined. My birthdays were ruined, because it wasn't about him. But I would never have thought this at the time until I was out of the relationship. So I suppose what my advice would be is to brutally look at the relationship. And I wasn't prepared to do this. I just wasn't. But I really hope that this podcast, and I pray that this podcast reaches the right people, because I have been in this state for 7 long years with a person who I didn't even know, and with a person who never really did love or care for me. I was an object to that person. I was bending over backwards to try and fix a relationship that had always got an expiry date on it. And I don't want other people to do that. I want other people to see that you are worth so much more than this person is ever going to give you. And that was one of the really hard truths of this, to actually be grieving a person that never existed. And I just couldn't get my head around it. And I'm going to share this experience as vulnerably as I can on this podcast. One, so that you guys can see it. Two, it's amazing for my own healing to share this story. And three, to get this out there, because, in the spiritual community, particularly, you will hear, oh, narcissism is just a label, but it's not. These people exist. These people are in society. These people are predators, even when they don't look like they are. They are wolves in sheep's clothing. And now that I'm out of it, I can see it exactly for what it is. So I just want to share my experience, share my knowledge, and over a cup of tea with you guys. So thank you so much. I'm super grateful for anybody who has taken the time to tune into this podcast, and I will speak to you all again soon. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Me, Myself, and the Narcissist. Um, I'm hoping everyone's got their cups of tea